father died in October of 1982. I never knew him very well. I mean, as one man to another, not until a few years ago. And even then, not very well. Before that, it was mostly fear that went between us. I was 25 before I began to understand what life must have been for him. I was helping him in the store. It was summertime. I was impetuous and scornful of his holding on to a life that had long since passed. When he confessed to me that there was nothing else for him. They say that young men go through a series of trauma. Kind of middle passage, I guess. In their middle 20s to late, early 30s. I guess it's going from young irresponsibility to a growing maturity and increasing dilemma. I found photographs of them after my father's funeral, him and Ma. And though I recognized the faces, I was surprised to find them young, full of laughter and gaiety. I laid them out on the table, and I could not find one where he wasn't smiling. They began to take hold of a strange kind of fascination for me, as if all the questions I had about love and sex and marriage and children, and most importantly, about manhood and what that meant. All those answers would be stretched out in front of me like a deck of cards. I just had to turn them over. I really want to know what it is like to be a man. I don't think I understand it. I don't have a working definition of it. Is it the grooming, the conversation, the books you read, or the people you love, the blows you take, the enemies you make? I looked closely, and I tried to patch together bits and pieces of what I knew, what I heard. But I couldn't get any answers. It seemed like I needed to be there. All his clothes fit me from then. His shoes are too small, but I guess that's poetic. Even our hairline is the same now. So I put on the clothes, I combed my hair, and I tried to put myself in 1939, a black man living in segregated Washington, D.C. I wanted so much to understand. I wanted so much to understand him. I needed for him to tell me.
too far from White Law Hotel, where your Uncle Ernest had his barbershop. Of course, we used to call it the Outlaw Hotel. And niggas used to come in there, get the head all bad, get to drinking, cut you just as soon as they cut a piece of cheese. Wouldn't think twice about it. Oh, you had to watch out. You had to watch out for yourself back then. I guess you still got to do the same thing today. But you always carry something, so you always keep a pen knife with you, a pocket knife or something, you know, in case you really got to protect yourself. I used to have 56 Studebaker, green, big steering wheel. About the nicest car I ever had. Kept a good wax job on it. But I had to give it up. You know, the store wasn't doing so well, and Mama was sick. So I had to sell it, kind of keep her head above water, you know. Tough times back then, but we made it. You know, we struggled. You know, we didn't have things easy as you guys have it. Yeah, I used to cruise up Connecticut Avenue. Cops stop a black man, cops stop a Negro up there. Quicker than they stop anything else on the street. Pull up alongside you, you know, kind of look at you funny. And they say, "What you doing up here, boy?" Or, "Don't you know you're not supposed to be in this neighborhood?" Yeah, they'd really try to get you going. They'd sit there watching you, too. You know, just waiting for you to pop off. They'd go upside your head with one of them nightsticks. Goddamn sons of bitches. I held my tongue. I never let them get to me. Any time I wanted to take my equalizer, you know, my little pipe I used to keep under the seat. Cop come up to my window, I'd want to bust his head wide open, but I held my tongue. Of course, you know, congressmen and such live up there, so I guess they gotta keep the neighborhood pure for white folk.
My father sold Christmas trees and fireworks in the lot we owned between the house and the store. Every summer my Uncle Gus would haul in a load, and I'd help him put up the stand. He let me or my sister sell the sparklers, the punks, and all the small things. He, Aunt Bill, and Daddy would handle the big things. One summer, I challenged Uncle Gus to let me put up the stand all by myself. It went well at first. He, Mr. Rutledge, Johnny Mac, Murdoch the numbers man, they were all sitting around against the wall watching me. But it was okay. I mean, I'd watched them do it often enough. And as I worked, I could see myself handing the saw over to my father when it was finished. He'd smile, broadly, proudly. He'd puff out his chest like he often did and slap me across the shoulder with a hearty laugh. He'd probably hand me a cold one, and the boys would all join in laughing. But it didn't happen that way. It seemed for all he had taught me, sawing, planing, hammering, all that fix-it stuff, I couldn't get the nail in. I could not get the nail in. And his face changed. He frowned. He was embarrassed. He turned away. I hit my thumb a couple of times, but the nail still wouldn't go in. Mr. Rutledge took the hammer from my hand. He spoke to me gently, and he said, as try as I might, nail wouldn't go through a nut, a piece of wood. I looked to my father, but he was aloof, cold, seemed very far away, and I suddenly seemed very small. I turned, and I left the yard. I thought I heard someone say, "Mama's boy," and I thought it was him. I can't remember when it was, but my father started a Cub Scout troop at the school my mother was teaching at. God, I remember all these faces. That's Lonnie in the left corner. I think he's an engineering student now at Howard. James. Berkeley. Jermaine. Jermaine broke into jail and killed someone, then broke out. It's strange how you change when you grow up, isn't it? He was my father's best friend, Mr. Rutledge. The only man I ever heard say to another man that he loved him. And this he said to my father, who was really embarrassed. He was everywhere we went when we were in the Cub Scouts. And it seemed no real surprise when finally he showed up in a uniform. He was a very lonely man. His wife had died. He'd taken to the bottle. But he seemed to me, I guess, well, he was a big brother. We were eating Pop-Tarts. One burned my hand and it fell to the ground. He reached into the toaster, pulled out another one, put it in the palm of his hand, and handed it to me, smiling. Man, I thought he was crazy. I have a godson, and I guess I feel toward him the same way Mr. Rutledge must have felt toward me. One day he reached into the toaster, get a piece of bread, and it burned his hand. He yelled, and it fell to the floor. I reached in, placed the other piece in the palm of my hand, and slowly I handed it to him, smiling. He frowned, cocked his head, kind of looked at me funny, and then he smiled. He snatched the bread from my hand and ran into the living room. I wonder if he'll remember that and me the way I remember Mr. Rutledge. The pieces still don't fit, not all of them, not evenly. But he is mine. He's finished with his life, and it's passed on to me to learn from, to take inspiration. I have a dream like he had, I guess. But it seems to me that this is the only thing that keeps you in the light. I've been out here hunting for myself. I've been needing a role. Well, this is my father's hand. This is my father's hand I carry around with me. And I don't think anyone knows what it is. But we all know what it is when we find it, if we find it. I think it's like a flower that never dies. And I think I've got one planted firmly in my heart.